Hey everyone, Iamspanos. We just wrapped up our May 2019 season for MTGA, and I wanted to go over a deck that I thought deserved a little more attention. This is a great deck for beginners. We're talking mono white aggro right now. I never played MTGA in my life up until this month, and I was able to get Mythic top 500 with the deck. Super easy, very beginner friendly, and pretty cost efficient as well. You can actually build this deck fairly quickly on free to play. So without further ado, I'm just gonna get right into it. The cost of the deck is 7 commons, 13 uncommons, 13 rares, and 7 mythics. So right off the bat, it's not too much. Right up, you're avoiding the cost of dual lands with this deck, being mono white. You're just running 20 planes, which is honestly pretty sweet. So I'm just going to get right into the list now. I'm going to talk about mulligans, matchups, scenarios where cards are good and not good, etc. So let's get right into it. Right off the bat, we got 4 Dauntless Bodyguard. Take note that this card is a knight. 1 drop, 2/1. Good turn 1, good card to just play to the board. This deck is full of 1 drops. I actually don't play any 2 drops. I'm going to discuss why in a couple minutes here as we get down to the list. So the secondary effect that Bodyguard has to offer, sacrifice Dauntless Bodyguard, and the chosen creature gains indestructible until the end of the turn. A little bit lackluster. I very rarely use this effect when laddering up. Emphasis on the fact that this card is a human knight, which is going to synergize well with cards like History of Analia and Benelish Marshal that we're going to talk about later on. So next card that we have here on the list is 3 Law Rune Enforcer. This card, great multi-purpose card. I mean, it's got 2 toughness on it, which is really good in a meta full of mono red aggro decks with Goblin Chain Whirlers running around. So highly recommend this card. 4 is a little much for it, but 3, he's gonna do what he needs to do, which is tap down those great 2-cost or greater creatures that are in your way, preventing you from applying pressure, which is the name of the game when you're playing this deck, when you're playing pretty much any aggro deck in general. Pressure is the name of the game. You're trying to get those 1 drops on the board, buff them up, and win the game as fast as possible. So Law Rune Enforcer is going to be a perfect tool to get the job done. Alright, so because of that effect with tapping down large creatures. Anyhow, moving on, we got Legion's Landing. This is like one of the best cards in the deck. The deck only plays 20 mana, so there is a chance that you might get locked at 2 mana. I love Magic, but man, the land system can be so frustrating sometimes when you're locked at 2 mana. Thankfully, this deck plays very well with very little mana, unless you straight up can't draw. If you can draw at least 2 mana, if you can get at least 2 mana on the board, you can do stuff with this deck, which is a big plus. So Legion's Landing, you're going to get value just from playing it immediately. Like, you're just going to get a 1/1 white vampire creature token with lifelink, which can be buffed up. This deck loves to buff its own minions, give everybody +1/1 counters that stick, by the way. So that 1/1 can very easily turn into a 2/2, a 3/3, even a 4/4, and so on. It's just another way to get a creature to the board, which also acts as a cost payer for cards like Venerated Loxton, which we're going to talk about later, sort of towards the top of the curve of the deck. Anyhow, Legion's Landing is a must. It's not one of those cards that you can afford not to play. It can get you to that 3rd mana if you can't quite draw it, and it can produce 1/1 lifelink vampire creature tokens on command for 3 mana, which this deck goes into top deck mode very fast. So if you ever have a dead turn where you top deck a planes or something when you don't want to, and you can't really do anything, you can just throw it on the board and just Legion's Landing and get something. And more often than not, you're going to have a Benelish Marshal on the board or something. Some way that you can buff up that 1/1 and turn it into a 2/2. And a 2/2 with lifelink, a 3/3 with lifelink, now we're talking a little bit. That's a little more value than just a regular 1/1. Anyhow, moving on, we've got 4 Sky Marchers Aspirant. Great card, 2/1. I know the stat line's a little poor. 1 toughness, like I said, Goblin Chain Whirlers. You're going to get victimized by him sometimes, guys. It's going to happen, but this card holds up on its own. I mean, we got that Ascend mechanic on it, so when you get the City's Blessing, when you get 10 permanents on the board at once, which happens as soon as like turn 3 with this deck, honestly, Sky Marcher's Aspirant it'll be a 2/1 with flying. And again, that 1 toughness, it's going to get buffed up, guys. Like, City's Blessing is a big part of the deck. Here's why. Snubhorn Sentry. This card must include as a 4 of. Oh my goodness. It's a great meat shield in the beginning of the game. Decks like Mono Red, people are going to want to get this off the board as soon as possible because they know what's coming. You don't want your opponent dropping 3 3s for 1, and that's what this is once you get the City's Blessing. And we just spoke about how easy it is to get because look at all these 1-drops we're playing, guys. Look at all these 1-drops we're playing. We're flooding creatures onto the board, and we're doing it fast. Snubhorn Sentry becomes live very quickly, and even when he's not live, perfect meat shield to play defense against decks. I keep talking about this deck, but it's 50 to 60% of the meta easily. Mono Red. It's going to be a great shield. It's going to be a great way to survive the storm that is Mono Red. Anyways, moving forward, we've got Baffling End. This is great removal for those wild growths and for those steam kettles. This is you just destroy a 3 cost or less, and that's going to get rid of a lot of problematic cards in the meta. If you let a steam kettle or a wild growth sit on the board, it's really ultimately going to make you lose the game. I'm actually considering buffing this up to 3 copies in a deck, but I don't know. I've got other forms of removal that we're going to talk about later, so 2 is cool for now. It's very cheap, very mana efficient, a really good form of removal that the deck needs. All right, moving forward, we got Benelish Marshal. This card is at 4. You must play this card at 4. Other creatures you control get +1/1. Plain and simple, this card is just good. It goes right along with the purpose of the deck of buffing up your minions, kind of increasing the equity in your board. Benelish Marshal, if you get 2 on the board, guys, oh my goodness. If your opponent doesn't have removal for this card, it is just going to net incredible value. It is a must-have on 4, not one of those cards, much like Legion's Landing, not one of those rares that you can afford to miss out on. Next up, we got Gideon Blackblade. So originally I was including Gideon at 4 in the deck. Man, Gideon's great, but I don't think he's great at 4. A little bit of a win more card if you're not already in advantage when you play Gideon. He can be kind of crappy. Your opponent can kill him before you even have a chance to do anything with him. So you have to kind of be in an advantage state where you can sort of protect him to, garner that value. But he's another valuable form of removal as well, which we don't quite use as much, but it does happen. When a Gideon is allowed to sit on the board, you can pop 6 counters off of him and destroy exile a target non-land permanent. Really good effect. And of course, giving one of your creatures either Vigilance, Lifelink, or Indestructible until the end of the turn is invaluable. Oftentimes, that Lifelink is the difference maker in me beating a lot of other aggro decks, staying alive and staying alive enough to be able to push myself and win the game. Vigilance, Indestructible. All these tools, they're all great. Gideon's a phenomenal card. Would not recommend more than 2. Like I said, he's a little bit situational, a little bit of a win more card, but still a great card to, get that extra push that you need to win the game. That's why I'm a fan of this card in general. Speaking of a fan of this card, here's History of Benalia. This card, oh man. At first I wasn't including it at all, which was super foolish of me. I'm fairly new to MTGA, although I'm a veteran card game player across the board. I've topped several events throughout, Yu-Gi-Oh!, Dragon Ball Super CCG, Hearthstone. I'm a multi-time legend. So I didn't pick up on this card being that good immediately. I saw other people using it. I'm like, oh, that's good. But people are going to have forms of removal. Those 2/2 White Knight tokens that you create with Vigilance, they're good and everything. But my opponent's just going to use shock on them and etc. Boy, was I wrong. The more I played this card, the more I drew it, the more I loved it. I started with 2, and then I bumped it up to 3. And I was like, man, I just can't get enough of this card. Let's go to 4. So History of Benalia, beyond just creating the tokens, the White Knight tokens with Vigilance, you get the part 3 of this enchantment saga is fantastic. And it synergizes with Dauntless Bodyguard, who's a human knight, and Benelish Marshal, who's also a human knight. It gives your knights +2/1. And a lot of the time, when you play this card, when that effect triggers, that part 3 triggers of this saga, you're going to have Dauntless Bodyguards and Benelish Marshals on the board, and your opponent is going to be completely overwhelmed with all the value that's going on. Unless your opponent's doing a really good job controlling the board, there's going to be no way that they're going to be able to deal with that pressure. So History of Benalia, especially if you have 2 on the board at the same time, God, it's just a lot to handle. You're just generating value right there. So I can't say enough good about this card. Definitely a 4 of. Goes right along with the purpose of creating pressure, guys. With aggro decks, pressure is the name of the game. That's what we're trying to do. We're trying to tap out our opponent, make them scoop up their cards as fast as possible. So moving forward, we got Unbreakable Formation. This is a fantastic instant. Use it in your main phase. Get a +1/1 counter on all your creatures. Vigilance and Indestructible. This is very often, again, a win more card. If you're not in advantage when you're playing this card, it's not going to be good. It can be a dead draw when, you know, you're on the losing end of a game. But if a game is even to advantage, this is the card that is going to break that barrier and help you burst through that glass ceiling. All your creatures are indestructible in Vigilance, so basically attacking becomes free. There's no drawback to attacking. You can apply that pressure freely, and those 1/1 counters persist throughout the rest of the game. This card's fantastic. Would not recommend it at more than 2. It's a perfect card to, like I said, get you through, get that extra push that you need to get that W. Moving forward, we got Ajani, Adversarial Tyrants. This is a card that I did not include until, you know, later point in the deck building process. Like, it was a lot of testing, did a lot of edits to this deck as I climbed up the ladder all the way to top 500. Ajani was a card that I really didn't think about, but once I looked at him, I was like, man, like, he's pretty versatile. And if you get that emblem, you know, create those 3/1/1 white cat creature tokens with lifelink, like, it's gonna be incredibly hard for your opponent to win after that. Also, you know, the +1/1 counters on up to 2 minions goes right along with the purpose of the deck of bolstering our board equity and increasing overall pressure. So Ajani, a little bit high on cost, but still very good. I think very worth to play. 4 is a little stiff for this deck's mana curve, but you do often see it. It's a great late game draw when you're in an even game, perhaps against another aggro deck. But yeah, would not recommend it at more than 1. It's a good good card that I don't think many of your opponents are going to expect or read. So for that reason, I included Ajani in the deck. Might be on the chopping block. I'm not quite sure, but I have liked it in testing so far. Moving forward, we got Conclave Tribunal. This is our main form of removal. We got 3 of these bad boys. Great form of removal. You can convoke it out. So you can tap down creatures. So you can use this card very early. Like I said, 4 is a lot, but Convoke, very rarely are you going to be actually paying 4 mana for this. You're going to be tapping down your own creatures. So using this, again, to get rid of problematic cards like Steam Kettle or big bad boys that are, you know, inhibiting your ability to get in there and apply pressure. You're just going to use this card to get rid of whatever problem card is giving you an issue at the moment. Really good. Convoke is awesome, and it's really easy to use with all these. Convoke with all these 1-drops, it's like so easy. It's like next to free, honestly. Plus, when you can use that card after using an Unbreakable Formation, because none of your creatures are going to be tapped, so you can Unbreakable Formation, push with everything, and then just Conclave Tribunal whatever you want. It's really a fantastic versatile card, and you can just get rid of any permanent. So we're talking enchantments, like stuff like that. Great form of removal. Must have in the deck. For the longest time, I was playing it at 2, and I was just like, man, there was a lot of times where I was like, man, I wish I had a Conclave Tribunal right now, so I bumped it to 3. Can be a little clunky if you draw too many of them. Be careful on your mulligans with this card, guys. But with that being said, it's a fantastic card and a must-have in the deck. Moving forward, speaking of must-haves, we're talking about Venerated Loxodon. I think this card's the heart of the deck. It's got Convoke, and he, you know, you can bring him out. He's 5 mana in total, but you can Convoke him out. So here's why I include all these 1-drops, guys. Here's why I include all these 1-drops is for Venerated Loxodon. You can get this card out as soon as, you know, pretty much turn 3, and buff up a nice board. And all of a sudden, turn 3 rolls around, and you got a nice board of creatures with 1/1 tokens on them. And then you're playing, you know, that Benelish Marshal. You're playing that History of Analia. Sorry about that. And you're just way in advantage. This card's so freaking good, man. I highly recommend it. Again, not one of those cards that you can afford to run less than 4 of. This is a must at 4. And a big beefy stat line 4/4. It's just fantastic. It's gonna do what this deck does, which is help apply pressure, buff up your minions, and win that game as soon as possible. Get up that ladder ASAP. So then we just got 20 planes. Not much to say about that. Just a quick wrap up on this video. This deck is equipped for best of 1. Okay, guys, best of 1. If you guys want, I can do a video making it a best of 3 deck. There is a way to make this deck very, very competitive in a best of 3 environment by, you know, siding in, you know, a couple islands, a couple, you know, dual lands with the white-blue dual lands, deputy detentions. You're siding into more of a mid-range-esque deck that is going to be able to hang with all those control decks, mid-range control decks that hang out in the best of 3 format. So yeah, this was my deck, and this was my first video. I hope you guys liked it. My first top 500. Hopefully, many more to come. I'm gonna try to push top 100, maybe top 50 this season, because this was my first season playing MTGA. So if you guys liked the video, I implore you leave a like on the video. Subscriptions very much help me at this stage in the juncture. I'm brand new to YouTube, but hopefully this will be the first of many. Take care, guys. I am Spanos. I will see you next time.